Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Purposeful Powerhouse podcast. How do you celebrate yourself? Is it easy for you to do that when you've achieved a goal or you've taken some action and you've shown up and you've done your best, whether best was your top of the top, 111%, or if your best on that particular day was 45%? Did you do your best? How can you celebrate yourself? And is it easy for you to do that? That's what we're going to be talking about today. So, the inspiration for this podcast episode came recently inside one of my communities. So we have recently started the Rise and Vibe series, which is a weekly session to help people to start their day with joyful energy and clarity with an amplified morning routine that helps you to rise and vibe. And so when we started off the series, I sent out a workbook and I asked people a bunch of questions about how they want to show up, how they want to feel, what their goals are, and how they will celebrate themselves at the end of the 5-week series. And I had one amazing person come back and say, you know what? She reached out to the community and said, I'm having a hard time with this. I'm having a hard time deciding how I will celebrate myself because what she was hearing in her head, which is super common, and if you can relate, send me a DM and let me know, because what she heard in her head was, why would you celebrate something you're supposed to be doing already? And so that caused her to feel some resistance. It caused her to really question whether or not she should be celebrating that or how she should be. And so that really, it landed for me. And it might land for you too, especially if you are like me, like this beautiful being, like many people in my community, like many of my clients, like many entrepreneurs. Consider yourself to be a high performer, or from a mental fitness, positive intelligence point of view, if you are a hyperachiever. So, high performer, hyperachiever, someone that is always going after it, always doing the thing, always showing up, always setting the goals, going after it. And what happens is we have this dialogue in our head that tells us more, better, faster, go, and causing us to push ourselves and have a hard time a lot of the time celebrating. And if we don't achieve our goals, have a strikingly easy time berating ourselves or being frustrated or being disappointed because of how much weight we put on that goal. So, what I wanted to share with you today is a really important question. If and when you find yourself having that challenge of anything really, anything that you hear in your mind, you hear yourself thinking, you hear yourself saying, you see yourself writing down on your journal or maybe making a post about it, anything that causes you to stop and recognize that feeling of defeat or resistance or confusion or doubt or sadness or whatever it is, I want you to ask yourself, when did I hear this before? When did someone say this to me before? Or maybe when did you hear yourself say this before? And what I want you to start to do is begin to track it back, because chances are you will be able to take it back far enough that when you were a little one, you heard someone, likely one of your caregivers, say something like that to you. Why would we celebrate something that you're supposed to be doing already? And the reality of that is that that caregiver was doing the best with what they had and what they knew how to do. But very likely you heard that enough that it was wired into your mind, and now you've begun to repeat it to yourself. Because if you think about that, you recognize, well, if it's something we should be doing, shouldn't we celebrate that we've done it? Yes, because a lot of the times we don't do these things that we, air quotes, should be doing. So, what I want you to do is begin to track it back with loving compassion, with curiosity, with non judgmental discernment, right? Because that's really important. Because if we start to critique ourselves for having this thought, critique whoever said it initially, then we are activated in our saboteur brain. We are judging the situation, and that's not ideal for a learning and growth perspective. So, go back far enough to begin to look at, when have you heard this before, either from yourself or somebody else, and recognize that there was a version of you in the past, right? And from a quantum physics perspective, all of our timelines are intersecting. So that version of you still exists. And so we get to pause, and you get to bring your hands on your body, and feel free to do this now or, later when and if this happens for you. Create safety in the moment, breathe, get grounded. So what you're doing there is breathing. You have your hands on your body in some way. You're regulating your nervous system to create that sense of regulation and steadiness within yourself now. And then, as though you are turning towards that past little version of you, either in your mind, or if you have a childhood photo that you can see of yourself, and I would suggest having one ideally on your fridge so you can dialogue with this version of yourself, and turn towards that version of you and ask them, him, her, them, what they would like to hear and what you know in your heart, because you'll be guided, very likely you'll be guided by your higher self to be able to speak to that version of you. Or if it doesn't make sense, maybe you can imagine this scenario, if it's somebody that you love going through this, what would you say to them? And the reality of it is that because of your connection to your inner sage and your wise higher self, you'll be able to communicate something to that past version of yourself that very likely the current version of you that was struggling with that in the first place needs to hear and wants to hear. Because what we're doing there is we're creating unconditional acceptance and love, unconditional praise. Because very likely there was something in the past that you wanted to celebrate, and somebody in your life said, oh, no, we don't celebrate that. You should be doing that already. Or, oh, that's silly. Why would you do that? And so we take these on. Right. And we take these on and we adapt these patterns as our own. They become hardwired into our subconscious mind. And later in life, until you start to do this work, they are the ones running the show. Right. And so that can cause all sorts of tight, constrictive, contractive, hard, heavy, sad, less than ideal emotions in our adult life. Because when you want to celebrate accomplishing a goal, or if you're doing something for yourself and you have these old patterns running the show, then things like, oh, why would I celebrate myself if I'm supposed to already be doing this, show up, and they make us contract, and they can make us feel really heavy, and they can make us doubt ourselves and feel silly for wanting to do that. So go back and love on that past version of yourself and give yourself that unconditional love and acceptance and praise, and ask that version of you how you should celebrate. How would they want to celebrate? Maybe it's with a little treat. Maybe it's with, going out for a walk, or maybe it's getting a massage, or maybe it's just doing a happy dance, or telling somebody that you love that, you did this thing and you're really proud of yourself. Because the reality is that we can really easily, myself included, my hand is up and I'll keep it up. We can really easily do this for other people a lot of the time, but struggle when it comes to our own self and our own goals. Because if the hyperachiever is running the show, or the high performer is running the show, then saying things like, well, up and away, let's get to the next goal. Like, no need to celebrate that. If you should be already doing it, come on, what's next? Let's go. And we're always seeking that next level of expansion, or that next level of growth or achievement. And we are not pausing to celebrate and honor what you have just done, whether or not you crushed it and achieved the goal and surpassed the goal, or you just showed up and you gave it your best in that moment. Any and all of that deserves to be celebrated, because the reality is our life is an accumulation of these choices. And if we wait to celebrate until who knows when, chances are we will have missed a lot of opportunities to generate that happiness and to give yourself that joy and that love and that compassionate energy and attention that we crave and we so deserve. So I wanted to speak to that, because a lot of times, these well-meaning caregivers, they condition us in a way to think that, oh, children should be seen and not heard. And these are just things that you should be doing. And so we tend to kind of forget that we have the opportunity to reparent and honor your innate worthiness and honor that desire to be seen. And that a lot of times shows up in that, these high expectations that we have for ourselves, especially as entrepreneurs. We're setting goals, we're going after it, we're showing up, and we're doing the thing. And that's incredible, and yay for you. But if we hold the carrot out just far enough that we're never really grabbing it, we're never really celebrating it, we're always feeling a little bit less than, which then of course feeds the saboteurs of like, yeah, you did that, but will you be able to do this? And yeah, you've done this new thing in your business, but will you be able to maintain it and sustain it and repeat it? And so as much as they are attempting to protect us, our saboteurs are really a limiting factor in our success and our growth. And so we have these beautiful opportunities when these things come up for ourselves, when you notice these questions. And I would ask you to really take some time with that and journal. What are you celebrating right now? What are you celebrating? How can you celebrate? How do you celebrate yourself? Because if you're like me and like this beautiful member of my community and several other people that said they had the same challenge, you may find it's hard to celebrate yourself. And that really comes down to that that story that many of us have, that in order to be worthy and deserving, we have to be productive and we have to be achieving and we have to be going after it. And that's simply not true. And when we turn back towards ourselves and give yourself these things that you so beautifully, innately deserve, this unconditional love, this unconditional acceptance, this unconditional support, unconditional praise, unconditional trust that everything is working out. Maybe not as we expect, and maybe not in the timeline that we expect, but it's learning to provide ourselves with those things. So that's really what I wanted to speak to today. I wanted to keep it short and sweet. And how can we begin to cultivate this practice of celebration? And what does that look like for you? Because for so many of us, that can be really challenging. So if it is for you, just know you're not alone, and really loving and supporting you through this journey as much as I can, because I know that we're all in this together. And, let me know if and what landed for you, and let me know, how are you going to turn towards that little version of you once you uncover where you've heard these things before. And it may not be around celebration. It may be around, being good enough or being capable of doing certain things, and see if you can track it back. When did I hear this before? And was there a time before that and time before that? And, some of us can remember a long ways back when you were really young. Some people like myself cannot necessarily, but you can remember a memory because your body is a storehouse for every experience you've ever had. So you may be able to just go back and might feel a bit fuzzy, kind of like when you wake up from a dream and you're trying to remember the parts of it. So that memory may be fuzzy or it may be crystal clear. And so really sit in that question of how can we begin to give yourself the sense of celebration, because the time is now for us to do that. And that's the sage version of you, the higher wisdom guidance within you, the warrior that knows that you can do it. That version of you will always sit down and acknowledge and celebrate and look at it, because everything that we come across is a gift or an opportunity, right? A gift for you to grow, or an opportunity for you to cultivate more power, more presence, more compassion, more curiosity, more empathy, more of these qualities of the heart of the sage self that will help us to grow and achieve your goals. Because as much as the saboteurs are pushing us to get somewhere, they also want to really limit where we're getting, right? So that's really important to remember. And the sage self knows, in order for you to stretch and expand, that is comes from that sense of allowance and trust and activation of this deep knowing that everything that you do is helping you to move towards your vision, by helping you to evolve in the person that you get to become to achieve it. And so the saboteurs, of course, are very threatened by that. So they want to berate us, and they pull out all the stops, and they pull out these stories and really keep us in that same self-defeating pattern. So how can you just take a look at that question or that challenge that you're having, and look at it from a different perspective, and look at it from that perspective of, is there a version of me that believed that at some point? And what does that version of me need to hear, want to hear, deserve to hear, that will begin to help heal this story, and therefore rewrite the belief and rewrite that experience for you so that you can give yourself what you need. So let me know if that landed for you. Let me know if you have questions. And if you're interested in finding out what your top saboteur is, I'm going to post the link to the free saboteur self-assessment in the comments. And that way you can take that and send me a DM with your results, because you're going to find it very eye-opening. And if you've done it before, you might want an upgrade because you're not the same person you are when you did it first before, because that definitely will shift based on the patterns that you are recreating and rewiring for yourself as you do this work of self-awareness and self-growth and personal development. So I am celebrating you. What are you celebrating today? Are you celebrating something little tiny that you have this beautiful day in front of you? Are you celebrating making time for yourself? What is it? Because there's always something, right? When we look through the lens of the heart, there's always something for us to celebrate. And especially the stuff that you quote unquote should be doing. Shouldn't we be celebrating the fact that you did it? Because if you should be doing it, then it is something that needs to get done. Yes, I know. We're funny creatures, aren't we? Yeah, we're funny creatures. But as Maya Angelou said, we are far more alike than we are unalike. And so chances are, if this landed for you, maybe this will land for somebody else too, that you know to be a really driven, high performance, hyper achiever, maybe dealing with anxiety or self-doubt as well. So let's look at this through a different lens. Let's celebrate anything that we can, because why not? I mean, this life thing, it's challenging sometimes, all the time, in one way or another. So let's celebrate that however we can. So sending you lots of love. Thank you for taking the time to listen today. Please share this with anyone that you think might be interested. And thank you for learning how to use your mind like the powerful tool that it is, so you can think on purpose, making the time and space to move your body to keep it strong and healthy, so you are showing up for yourself as the purposeful powerhouse that you truly are, because that is the version of you that you get to be and become and authentically embody in order to live into your vision. So until next time, take good care. Bye-bye.